So I believe we were discussing the circular convolution theorem. Now, as we have seen, the equivalent property for discrete Fourier transform for linear convolution is the circular convolution. And I believe we have discussed how the circular convolution is performed. And you can very easily understand why this operation is called circular convolution. And we had also seen that in the previous class, circular convolution assumes importance only as a means to compute linear convolution. Otherwise, circular convolution does not have any other meaning, any other purpose. So circular convolution is only a means to implement linear convolution. Now, a whole lot of questions will arise. Why will you need to implement circular convolution or linear convolution by means of a similar operation called circular convolution? And now the answer lies in the frequency domain representation of circular convolution. So we will read out the circular convolution theorem, which states that if x of n has got an endpoint DFT given by x of k, and if h of n has got an endpoint DFT given by h of k, so we will think of x of n as a signal and h of n as a filter, which represents the impulse response of the filter. Then you can write the endpoint circular convolution of x of n and h of n. X of n and h of n, it will have an endpoint DFT given by x of k into h of k. So the circular convolution in the time domain becomes a product, that's a multiplication of the individual discrete spectra and the frequency domain. So this means that we can implement the circular convolution via a roundabout method in the frequency domain by, first of all, computing x of k from x of n. But that is by taking an endpoint DFT, you can get x of k. Taking an endpoint DFT of h of n, you can compute h of k. Then maybe you can multiply x of k and h of k. We will call this product as y of k. And then if you take the inverse DFT of y of k, you can maybe call the signal as y of n, and that signal y of n would be the endpoint circular convolution of x of n and the h of n. So this is the way in which you can compute circular convolution in the frequency domain. And now the same can be used for computing linear convolution, because you know that linear convolution can be implemented as a circular convolution operation. So since we had discussed in the previous class, I believe that you will be knowing all about this. So I will ask one of you to answer this. Dev Ganesh, you are there in the class, right? So Dev Ganesh, can you explain, or can you just state how you can implement linear convolution with circular convolution? Because this was the takeaway from the last class.
Hello.
Dev Ganesh, Paranjalu. How can you implement linear convolution using circular convolution? Do you remember what we had discussed in the previous class?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If circular convolution, if circular convolution is done in L plus p minus 1 on circular times,
right,
then the result will be same as the
linear convolution with two sequences. Okay, so that's very good. So x of n, if x of n has got a length equal to L, and if h of n, that's a filter, has got a length is equal to p, typically you have L, that is the length of the signal, will be much greater than the length of the filter. For example, maybe you can think of L as equal to 1000 samples, that is the signal having 1000 samples, and maybe the filter as having 100 samples. So that could be the usual case. So usually the length of the signal is much greater than the length of the filter. So you know that the linear convolution of x of n and h of n will be of length L plus p minus 1 that we have discussed. Linear convolution of x of n and h of n is of length L plus p minus 1. And now you also know that for circular convolution to take place, you need both sequences to have the same length. So that is why you have this n here. This indicates an n-point circular convolution. So if you zero pad and extend x of n to a length L plus P minus 1. So here you had a length of L. Now you put P minus 1 zeros at the end and make the length equal to L plus P minus 1. So here the length is equal to P. Put L minus 1 zeros and make the length equal to L plus P minus 1. And then compute the L plus P minus 1 point the DFTs. So n is equal to L plus P minus 1. Compute the L plus P minus 1 point DFT. So then you know that the n point, that is now the L plus P minus 1 point circular convolution of x of n and h of n, is the same as the linear convolution of x of n and h of n. So this you can implement in the frequency domain like this. So take the L plus P minus 1 point x of k, take the L plus P minus 1 point h of k, multiply x of k and h of k, and take the IDFT. So that should give you the linear convolution of x of n and h of n. Now, why do you need to implement this in the frequency domain? I had also mentioned that this computation of the DFT is an extremely time-consuming operation. So DFT is an extremely time-consuming operation. Say, for example, if you have an n-point sequence, to compute the n-point DFT of the sequence, you require n squared complex multiplications and 4n squared real multiplications. So that number will be very large. For example, if you have n is equal to, that's the length is equal to 2 raised to 5, which is equal to 32, then n squared would be 2 raised to 5 the whole square, that will be equal to 2 raised to 10. So just give me a second. Just give me a second. I have a call from the faculty. Just give me a second. Okay, so we'll continue. So the computing the DFT is a very time-consuming operation. So it seems that computing the linear convolution in the frequency domain is will be extremely time-consuming if you are going to directly implement the discrete Fourier transform expression to compute x of k and h of k. But fortunately, there are extremely fast methods to compute x of k and h of k, which we call as fast Fourier transform. So fast Fourier transforms are fast algorithms to compute x of k, that's compute the DFT of the sequences. So by means of fast Fourier transforms and inverse fast Fourier transforms, for practical lengths of x of n and h of n, you will see that doing the computation of the linear convolution in the frequency domain could be much faster than doing this directly in the time domain. So we will illustrate that later. Now, our aim is to prove this relationship. That is to prove that the n-point circular convolution of x of n and h of n will have a DFT given by the product of x of k and h of k. So, the proof is fairly straightforward. As we have seen, all the properties of the discrete Fourier transform can be proved by looking at the corresponding discrete Fourier series property and then look at one period of the discrete Fourier series. So that is the easiest way to prove the properties of discrete Fourier transform. So we have discussed the periodic convolution of x tilde and x tilde of n. So the periodic convolution of x tilde of n and the x tilde of n is defined like this. Sigma m equal to 0 to n minus 1, x tilde of m, x tilde of n minus n. Let us call these sequence as y tilde of n. That is a periodic convolution of x tilde of n and h tilde of n will be called as y tilde of n. And now let us evaluate the discrete Fourier series of y tilde of n. So this is y tilde of n. So discrete Fourier series of y tilde of n can be written as sigma n equal to 0 to n minus 1 y tilde of n into wn raised to nk. So I have expanded and written the expression for y tilde of n here. So now let us rearrange the equations like this. So this we can write as sigma m equal to 0 to n minus 1 x tilde of m into sigma n equal to 0 to n minus 1 h tilde of n minus m w raised to nk. So this is the DFT of the shifted, DFS of the shifted sequence, h tilde of n minus m. And now we have seen that the time shifting property indicates that sigma n equal to 0 to n minus 1, h tilde of n minus m w raised to nk is equal to w raised to mk into h tilde of k. So which is easy to prove by putting n minus m is equal to, let us say, some n dash, and then rewriting this will give you this expression. So now substituting that back, so you can take h tilde of k outside and therefore write h tilde of k into sigma. Now what remains is sigma m equal to, so this should read as sigma m equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of m w raised to mk. So I made two mistakes here. So this should be m equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of m w raised to mk, which you can write as, this expression will become h tilde of k. So this is h tilde of k into x tilde of k. So you have y tilde of k is equal to h tilde of k into x tilde of k. So this indicates that y tilde of n, which is the periodic convolution of x tilde of n and x tilde of n, will have a DFT given by h tilde of k and x tilde of k. So we will take one cycle of that. So one cycle of y tilde of n should be equal to y of n. One cycle of x tilde of n is equal to x of n. One cycle of x tilde of n is equal to h of n. So one cycle of the periodic convolution becomes n point circular convolution. So this is just equal to sigma m equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of m h of n minus m modulo n for 0 less than or equal to n less than or equal to n minus 1. So this will have an endpoint DFT given by one cycle of h tilde of k, which is h of k, into one cycle of x tilde of k, which is equal to x of k. This is understood? I hope this is understood. If you have any doubts, please you can ask now. And there are a few typos in this slide. One is this should have been m equal to 0 to n minus 1. This should have been w raised to mk. And here instead of small k, I have put a capital K. I hope this is understood. Arvind, if anyone of you has any doubt, please ask. Seems fairly straightforward.
Clear.
Clear. Okay, so now this is the discrete. This is the proof of the convolution theorem. Now, this we had discussed in the previous class. You know that linear convolution can be represented as a Toeplitz matrix formulation, and the circular convolution can be represented as a circular matrix formulation. And you had discussed in the previous class without any proof that if you do an L plus B minus 1 point circular convolution, you'll get the same as that of the linear convolution. So now we will try to prove that now. So this is the proof for a circular convolution of the sequence. So this is x2 of m. This is x1 of m. So we are attempting to find out the circular convolution of x2 of n and x1 of m. So what we'll be doing is we'll be circularly reflecting and shifting the sequence x2 of n. So we'll start by x2 of minus m modulo n for 0 less than m less than or equal to n minus 1, which you can write by putting the first sample as such. So this is the first sample. Take the last sample. The last sample I will put as is second sample. This sample will form the third sample. Likewise, this will form the last sample. So this is x2 of 0 minus m modulo n for 0 less than or equal to m less than or equal to n minus 1. Then what you need to do is we will do a multiply and accumulate of these two signals x1m and x2 0 minus m. So that should give you this should give you the value of the signal at n equal to 0. So the value of the signal at n equal to 0 would be the product of this, because all of the samples are equal to 0, this into this value. So that is shown here. Okay. Now, to find out the value of the circularly convolved sequence and the value of value 1, what you have to do is you have to formulate x2 of 1 minus m modulo n, which is again obtained by circularly shifting the sequence. So this is the mirror reflected sequence. Now you circularly shift the mirror reflected sequence. So this will come to the first sample, this will move. So these two are the samples. So now the product of these two samples, we will assume that this is equal to 1. So product of these two samples is equal to this value that is shown here. Okay. Is that clear? So likewise, you can compute all the other samples. So this is an illustration of circular convolution. This one is a very simple example. We'll look at one more example. This is a pulse. That is the value of the discrete pulse is equal to 1 from 0 to n minus 1. So there are n samples, all of which are equal to 1. And now we will consider x2n as the same sequence. x2n is the same sequence. So when x2n is the same sequence, now if you mirror reflect the sequence, keep the first sample as such, then the last sample becomes the second sample, last one from sample becomes the third sample. That is the circularly reflected sequence x2 of minus m modulo n would be the same as the sequence itself because all the values are equal to 1. So therefore, if you multiply and accumulate, the value will be equal to 1 into 1 plus 1 into 1 plus 1 into 1 plus etc. up to there are n such products. So the value at n equal to 0 would be equal to capital N. So x3 of 0 would be equal to capital N. Likewise, you see that all the values are equal to capital N. So this is the circular convolution of the two sequences. Okay, we will skip the second example. Now, there is an equivalent property in the frequency domain. So the equivalent property in the frequency domain says that if you circularly convolve the spectra, that is the discrete spectra in the frequency domain. So now see what is the expression for the circular convolution in the frequency domain. That you write as 1 by n sigma L equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of L W k minus L modulo n. So there is a 1 by n here. Now this will have an endpoint DFT given by x of n into Wn. So this equation looks very deceptively similar to this equation. So x of n points circularly convolved with h of n. You will have an endpoint DFT given by x of k into h of k. Now x of L endpoint is x of k endpoint circularly convolved with w of k. I have put some function w of k. W of k, where w of k is the DTFT of the sequence w of n, small w of n. So I believe I should illustrate this because at a later point you will see that this has got some significance, especially when we start the discussions on the fourth module, on the third module when we see FIR for this. This will assume much great significance. So we will move on to the whiteboard and then we will discuss that once again. We'll illustrate this first. I hope the whiteboard is visible. So what we have here is so x of n is my signal, and now I will call a function w of n, which I will now call as a window function. So this I will call as a window function. Now, why I am going to call this as a window function is because I am now going to look at the signal through a window. So I will assume this to be a window through which I am going to examine x of n. So it will be like this, somewhat like this. So for ease of explanation, I will draw a continuous time signal. I'll draw it as in a continuous time fashion. So which could be the envelope of some discrete signal. So this is my discrete signal that I have. So which means I have samples like this. So these are the samples. Okay. Now, let me assume that I am going to examine this signal through a window. So this is my window through which I am going to look at the signal. So the window has got several samples. So this window I will call W of n, and this signal I am going to call as X of n. Let me look at the value of window as equal to 1. All the values are equal to 1. So what this window does is this will examine the signals signal only in this region. So where you have this window, you will get the signal. So I'll just draw the resultant signal. So only this part of the signal is going to be examined by the window. Is that understood? So this is my signal. I am going to look at the signal through this window, and this window will retrieve only those that part of the signal that is available through the window. So outside the window, the value is equal to 0. So this is how you look at a scenery through a window. So if you have a scenery outside, a very scenic view through the window, let's say through the window of a penthouse, and if you look at the scenery through the window, then you will see only that part of the window, that part of the scenery. Is that clear? Which means this region is not visible to you. This region has been discarded. You are only looking at this part of the signal. So maybe I can examine the signal through different shaped windows. So this is a rectangular window. So this is how you usually have your window. See? So this is how you will have a window. So I'm going to illustrate this by, this is my window. So I open the window and I see a scenery. So usually you have a rectangular shaped window, but no one prevents you from having a triangular window. I can also have a triangular window if I need. But this makes no architectural sense if I think of a triangular window. But if you are looking at signals, in fact, this makes some very great sense, because if you are looking at signals, you can have different shaped windows, and you will see that all the shapes of the windows will have different properties. So for example, I can have a window like this. Now the window could be, sorry, the window could be something like this. I can look at the signal through a window like this. But now the window is having this shape. So maybe I will call this window as a triangular window. Then I am going to look at this signal through a triangular window. So which means I have to multiply each sample by the corresponding sample in the triangular window. So anyhow, this does not make much sense now, but it will be very clear when we discuss the windowing method for FIR filter. So let us leave our further discussion for that. So what we have here is a product of a signal and a window. So the signal is being multiplied by the window. X of n is being multiplied by the window. X of n is being multiplied by the window. So now what this says is that X of n into W of n will have an endpoint DFT given by X of k endpoint circularly convolved with the, so sorry, it's 1 by n endpoint circular convolution of X of k and W of k. 1 by n endpoint circular convolution of X of k and W of k, which I can write as 1 by n sigma L is equal to 0 to n minus 1. Here I have X of L. Now here I have W of, so this is X of L, so square bracket, W of k minus L modulo n for 0 less than or equal to k less than or equal to n minus 1. So this is the circular convolution theorem in the frequency domain. So now let us go back to our PowerPoint presentation once again. I hope this is visible. Someone please give me feedback. Is the PowerPoint presentation visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what this says is that if I multiply the signal in the time domain, in the frequency domain, it's the circular convolution, the frequency domain. So the proof is very similar to the previous proof. So this I am not going to work out. So I will leave it to you as a homework, which you can do by yourself. It's very easily done. It's exactly like how you prove the circular convolution theorem in the time domain. So x of n, w of n has got an endpoint DFT given by 1 by n sigma L equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of w of k minus L modulo n for 0 less than or equal to k less than or equal to n minus n. See, there is no need to write 0 less than equal to k less than k n less than or equal to n minus n, because you already have only x of n, and x of n is understood to be a finite duration sequence from 0 to n minus 1. But there is no harm if you write 0 less than or equal to k n less than or equal to n minus 1. Is that understood? So even if you do not write n, this expression is correct. You only need to write 0 less than or equal to k less than or equal to n minus 1, but this statement is not wrong. Okay, so now we will see how you can implement linear convolution using DFT, which we had discussed in the previous class. So 0 pad the input sequence x1n and x2n. So if you are doing the convolution of x1n and x2n, 0 pad the input sequences x1n and x2n to appropriate length. Compute the endpoint DFTs of the input sequences x1n and x2n. Compute x1k and x2k, and then compute the product of x1k into x2k, and then compute the IDFT of x1k and x2k. So this should give you the linear convolution of x1n and x2n if they have been properly extended to the appropriate lengths. Right? So now we will prove this statement. Now, circular convolution will prove that circular convolution is linear convolution followed by time aliasing. Now, I want one of you to explain what do you mean by aliasing. So, in which context have we heard the word aliasing?
So sampling.
You heard about aliasing in the context of sampling. So, can you explain what is aliasing in the context of sampling?
Like when the band limit of the signal becomes too high, then reconstruction exhibits that imperfection. There will be missing of values in between.
What do you say? Missing of values? There are no
Like
missing of values.
Reconstruction exhibits imperfections.
Now, what are the imperfections in the reconstruction? I would like to know more about that. What are the reconstructions? Sorry, imperfections in the reconstruction.
That means certain in that band limit that we are considering, certain values may not be incorporated if we are drawing the graph.
No, what is aliasing in that case? So maybe I will have to go back to the concept of sampling theorem once again, because this is important. So I will go back to my whiteboard and then explain that once again. Okay, so now I'm discussing the sampling theorem once again, because it seems some of you have forgotten about that. So now if we had a baseband signal that was band limited, so you know that the sampling theorem requires the baseband signal to be band limited. And you also know that there are no perfectly band limited signal in the real world. No signals in the real world are band limited. So now you need that this has to be sampled at above the Nyquist rate. So I had discussed about a strict inequality in the previous year. Do you remember that? So you require Fs to be greater than 2Fm. Fs to be greater than 2Fm. So this is Fm. You require Fs to be greater than 2Fm. So what will happen is, if you do not have Fs as greater than 2Fm, if you have Fs equal to 2Fm, what you have here is you'll have is repeating periodic spectra like this. This is for the case where you have Fs equal to 2Fm. So here you have further application. Likewise. Is it understood? This you have already discussed. So that is why you have the discrete frequency as periodic. So once you have sample, the spectra becomes a periodic spectra. So therefore you have, so in the analog domain, this would be 0, this would be Fm. And now since you have sample at the Nyquist rate, this is equal to 2Fm, which is equal to Fs. So you have sample at the Nyquist rate. So you require this to be a strict inequality. So which means you should have a very small guard band in between. Otherwise, you will not be able to reconcile. But let us look at the critical case, which is the Nyquist sampling condition. So to reconstruct this, what you need is you will need an ideal low pass filter, which gets back the baseband. So if you have an ideal low pass filter, you will get the baseband. So what you have here is you have the signal. You have the signal. The signal I will call as x of t. So x of t goes to a multiplier where you have a sampling train. So the sampling train is sigma k equal to minus infinity to plus infinity delta p minus kt. So this is the sampling train. And now, so this is a sampled sequence. So this maybe you can call as x of nt, or which is the discrete sequence. This is a discrete signal, and this is a discrete sequence x of n. I can maybe represent that. So this is x of n. Now to get back x of t from x of n, you need to do the reconstruction process. For that, for reconstruction, you will need the ideal low pass filter. So you will need a low pass filter. So this is a reconstruction filter. Now you know that if you have a sample at the Nyquist rate, you will need a Brickell ideal low pass filter to get back this, and you also need that you need Fs to be slightly, at least slightly greater than 2Fm. So we have a strict inequality here. In the previous versions of the sampling theorem, this was written as Fs greater than or equal to 2Fm. But now the new age definition for the sampling theorem requires Fs to be greater than 2Fm. Okay. So this is a reconstruction filter. So if the reconstruction filter is appropriate, then you have this output signal. So maybe this will call as what this reconstruction will do is it will interpolate between the samples and get you some x cap of t, which is equal to x of t if the signal x of t is band limited, and if you have sampled at above the Nyquist rate, and if you have used an appropriate reconstruction filter, then x cap of t would be equal to x of t. Is it understood? Now what is aliasing in this condition? So if you have sample at lesser than the Nyquist rate, what will happen is you will have an overlapping like this. Remember? You will have an overlapping like this. So this corresponds to this frequency. Now, if it's a real signal, this also corresponds to this frequency. So which means a high frequency signal now is being aliased as a low frequency signal. So what we can hope to get back is only the portion that is not. This is the only portion that we can get back from this signal. We cannot get back this because it has overlap with the succeeding case. So in effect, what you have here is, if you have a high frequency sine wave, if this was a signal that was sampled, and maybe if you take a very small sampling rate, and you have sampled, you are not sampled it well enough, so maybe the samples are like this, So you are taken only samples like this. So what the reconstruction filter will do is it will interpolate the samples like this. So I'll use a different color for that. It will interpolate the samples in this manner. So instead of getting back the high frequency sine wave, you will be getting back a very low frequency sine wave. So this is a sine wave that you will be getting. Whereas this is a sine wave that had been originally sampled. Is it understood? So the high frequency sine wave, which was here and which is also present in its replica as here. Now this high frequency sine wave is being reproduced as a very low frequency sine wave. So there is Meenakshi gave me the answer that there is something missing. What?
Sir, I actually didn't understand what will happen to the values when overlapping happens.
Okay.
Like
so what happens is this high frequency is now being reflected as a low frequency signal, right?
yes, sir.
Okay. Now is this understood? So here you have a high frequency. This is a high frequency. This corresponds to a high frequency. So this is the high frequency that we have. Now this high frequency cannot be retrieved back. So this will be so if you have a frequency here, this is a high frequency in this signal. So this is the same as this frequency itself. So this high frequency is now being recognized as a low frequency signal. But this had been, let's say, this had been 100 hertz, and now this will be recognized as maybe 20 hertz. Is it understood?
Oh, okay. So frequency will be still there, but then it
there
becomes
will be a,
a
signal,
low frequency.
but that will be recognized as a low frequency.
Oh, okay, sir.
Okay.
I didn't understand the overlapping, but okay,
so,
now it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So if you have, we will use a numerical example here. So if you have a 100 hertz signal, so if that 100 hertz signal is, it should be sampled at least, it should be sampled at above 200 hertz, right? As per the Nyquist criterion, it should be sampled at least 200 hertz. So now instead, let us say that it is sampled at 180 hertz. 180 hertz. So here you had 100 hertz, and now it should be sampled at least 200 hertz, but instead it is sampled at 180 hertz. Now you will see that this will have an alias at 80 hertz. That's a 100 hertz signal now will be recognized as an 80 hertz signal. Is it understood? 100 hertz signal should be sampled at least 200 hertz. Now, because it is sampled only at 180 hertz, there is an overlap of 20 hertz, right? You see, it should have been sampled at 200 hertz. Instead, it's sampled at 180 hertz. Now, this will be overlapping by 20 hertz. 20 hertz. So, the 100 hertz signal now will be recognized as an, since it is overlapping by 20 hertz. So, this is 100 minus 20, that will be equal to 80 hertz. So, if this is sampled at a very low sampling rate, then it will be recognized as a very low frequency. So this is called aliasing. So this is a numerical example. So aliasing only means that that frequency is seen as another frequency. That signal is seen as another signal. That you call as the alias of the original signal. But now you discuss aliasing in the frequency domain. So aliasing indicates some kind of an overlap. In the frequency domain, there is some kind of an overlap. So therefore, you have an alias. So that higher frequency is being represented as a lower frequency. Then I had discussed about the word meaning of alias. Alias only means he is also known as, he or she is also known as. Like for example, there is this famous Mohanlal film where he is also known as, his name is Sagar and he is also known as Jackie. So there is one very famous Mohanlal film. So this is aliasing in the frequency domain. So this aliasing by its name itself indicates some kind of overlap. So this is an overlap in the frequency domain. So you call as an aliasing in the frequency domain. So now we'll go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Now we will be talking of aliasing in the time domain. So which indicates that there is some kind of an overlap in the time domain. So earlier we had talked about overlapping of the spectra in the frequency domain. So now we have an overlap in the time domain. Now consider that you have a signal x of n. We'll consider x of n to be a finite duration signal. Now x of n has got a DTFT given by x of e power j omega. Now assume that this Fourier transform, that's a discrete time Fourier transform, is sampled at frequencies omega k is equal to 2 pi k by n. So this will be the discrete Fourier series x tilde k of the periodic sequence x tilde f n is equal to sigma r equal to minus infinity plus infinity x of n plus rn. So we'll go back to this again. X of n is a finite duration sequence. This has got a DTFT x of e power j omega. And you had also discussed that we represent the DTFT as x of e raised to j omega to indicate that this omega is a periodic frequency. That's a discrete frequency is periodic. So x of e power j omega is a periodic spectrum. X of e power j omega is a periodic spectrum, which means that you have some repeating shape in the periodic spectrum, which has got a period equal to 2 pi. I hope that is understood. So do we need to illustrate this? So now further, let us assume that this Fourier transform is sampled at frequencies omega k is equal to 2 pi k by n. So I think I should now illustrate this. So you have an x of n. X of n having a DTFT given by x of e power j omega. X of e power j omega. So x of e power j omega has got some shape. So x of e power j omega is having some shape. But you know that x of e power j omega is a periodic spectra. So this is a periodic spectra. So this is what you have. This is x of e power j omega. So I assumed x of e power j omega to be real so that I can illustrate that here. So this is omega. So omega is uniquely in the range 0 to 2 pi. So this is 0 to 2 pi. Or maybe I can look at this is minus pi. This is plus pi. So x of e power j omega is uniquely in the range minus pi to plus pi. So this is repeating. So this is one, let's say this is one cycle of x of e power j omega. So what we are talking of is we are now going to sample of x of e power j omega at omega is equal to omega k is equal to 2 pi k by n, where k takes values 0, 1, etc. up to n minus 1. So what we have is something like this. So I will just news so this is x of e power j omega. So this is sampled at 2 pi k by n like this. So this is sampled. So x of e power j omega is sampled at 2 pi k by n. This is understood? So now you have, instead of omega, you have a variable k. So maybe I will call this as x of k. And you see that x of k is periodic. So this we can maybe represent as x tilde of k. Is this understood? If I sample x of e power j omega, I get a discrete spectrum which is periodic. because x of e power j omega is periodic. I'll go back to the PowerPoint presentation again. So this I can call as x tilde of k. And now x tilde of k, since it is periodic, you can assume x tilde of k to be the discrete Fourier series of the periodic sequence x tilde of n, sigma, where x tilde of n is equal to sigma r equal to minus infinity to plus infinity, x of n plus rn. You could also written this as x of n minus r. And now we have not talked about, remember that we had not mentioned that the length of the sequence x of n is equal to n. We had not mentioned the length of the sequence x of n. But now, this length can be maybe greater than n also. Say, for example, x of n can be, let us say, 100 samples. And then we will sample the spectrum such that capital N is equal to 50, for example. For example, we can have x of n is equal to having samples x of 0, x of 1, etc. up to x of 99. So how many samples are there? There are 100 samples. Now, I will form a periodic sequence. I can think of a discrete time Fourier transform for the sequence given by x of e power j omega. And x of e power j omega, I am going to sample such that omega k is equal to 2 pi k by, let us say, 80. This is not 100. I'll purposely take this to be a different value, 80, where k takes value equal to 0, 1, 2, etc., up to 79. So this could be a case. So we are going to generalize this. So there is no need that this capital N, which is equal to 80 here. So capital N is equal to 80. This is maybe lesser than the length of the sequence. So that's also possible. So that is why we have represented this to be. We have not talked about the length of the signal x of n, and this sequence x of e power j omega can be sampled at omega k is equal to 2 pi k by n. So which you can write as x tilde of k, and x tilde of k will be definitely the DFS of some periodic sequence x tilde of n, which can be written as sigma r equal to minus infinity to plus infinity, x of n plus rn or x of n minus rn, that amounts to the same sequence. So again, going back to the whiteboard. So now if I sample x of e power j omega, if I sample x of e power j omega, I have some x of k. This will be some x tilde of k because it's a periodic sequence. And now there will be some x tilde of n, which is the inverse DFS of x tilde of k. But now see that this x tilde of n is the sequence. So which screen are you seeing now? Are you seeing the whiteboard? Excuse me, are you seeing the whiteboard or are you seeing the presentation?
Whiteboard.
Okay. So this could be the sequence sigma r is equal to, that is x tilde of n is the sequence sigma r is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n minus rn. So this could be x of n plus rn also, but this is actually x of, so I'll expand this, x of n, that is r equal to 0, plus for r is equal to 1, this is x of n minus 80. So this is plus x of n plus 80. So for that is r equal to minus 1. This is x of n plus 80. plus x of n minus 2 into 80. So here you have plus x of n plus 2 into 80 plus etc. So now you are looking at a sequence, that's a periodic sequence that is formed by an overlap of x of n, because x of n had how many samples? X of n had 100 samples. So x of n had 100 samples. So x of n had 100 samples. So this was the 100 samples of x of n. So this is x of n. The samples range from 0 to 99. Now you shift the sequence by how many samples? You shift this by 80 samples. This is x of n minus 80. So this is the sample number 80 to 179. See? And now if I shift this by minus 80 samples, see, this is 19. So if you add, so this is x of n plus 80. This is x of n, and this is x of n minus 80. So we were talking of this periodic expression sigma r equal to minus into delta plus into 3 x of n minus r into 80. N minus r into 80. So if you add this, what you are going to get is this only unique sequence. So what is the unique sequence that you have? This is the only unique sequence that you have. Right? Do you understand? Okay. So again, this part is overlapping. So this is now continuing here. Up to here. So only up to, so here again it will overlap. So this will have a length of ET. So this is 0, this is 79. So we are not talking of the length of the finite duration signal x of n to be the same as the period of the periodic sequence here. That could be different. So that is what we are trying to emphasize. Okay, so I hope you are seeing the presentation now. So this is very important. We are now talking of an n which could be different from the length of the sequence x of n. So one cycle of x tilde of k, this one cycle of x tilde of k, which is the sampled x of e power j omega, that you can call as x of k, which you can write as x of e raised to j 2 pi k by n for 0 less than or equal to k less than or equal to minus 1, and it's equal to 0 otherwise. And now let us consider the inverse DFT of x of k, which is one cycle of the periodic sequence x tilde of n. We will call this as xp of n, and the xp of n computed as xp of n is equal to x tilde of n for 0 less than or equal to k less than or equal to n minus 1, and it's equal to 0 otherwise. This will have an endpoint DFT given by x of k. So I should have written a square bracket. Is that clear? So again, we will go back to the whiteboard. So the original sequence was This was the original sequence. Had samples from 0 to 99. Let's say this had 100 samples. So this is my original sequence. Now with this original sequence, I am now forming a periodic sequence which had a periodicity of 80. So therefore this is overlapping by 90 samples. So this is 0 to 99. So this is now 80. So this will be 179. So this will be 80. This will be 179. Let us look at the previous sequence. So the previous sequence would be overlapping like this. So the previous sequence will be overlapping like this. So this is 19. These samples are overlapping. And this will be the period of the sequence. So if you add all these up, the unique sequence that we have here is the sum of this plus this sequence, right? This is understood. So the period of the periodic sequence would be like this. This would be 0 to 79. So this is obtained by adding these two. So this is shown like this. And here I will show this like this. So this part may be illustrated as, I'll hatch it in both directions. So this part is overlapping, and this I will hatch it in a similar manner. So this part will be hatched to be like this. So this is a sequence that is overlapping. So this I will call as X of n. This is my X of n, which had 99 samples, and this I will call as XP of n, which had 80 samples, 0 to 79. So XP of n is one period of my periodic sequence that is formed like this. Now, in which case will XP of n be the same as X of n? I have illustrated this. Now, when will XP of n be equal to X of n? Anyone? Lakshmi? Under what condition will XP of n be equal to X of n? So here I had considered sigma nr equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n minus rn. So I could have also written as x of n plus rn. X of n minus rn. You had x of n having a length equal to 100 samples. X of n had a length equal to 100 samples. And now if I take n equal to 80 samples, you see that there is an overlap here. How many samples will overlap? 20 samples.
So 20
20 samples will overlap. So for no overlap, you have to take n to be at least 100, right?
Yes, sir.
So n should be greater than or equal to 100 or there is no overlap. So if n is greater than or equal to 100, then it is evident that xpn is equal to x of n.
X of n.
Very good.
Okay.
So you go back again. So if x of n has length less than or equal to capital N, that is if the length of x of n is less than or equal to capital N, then there will be no time aliasing. So which means there will be no overlap in the time domain. So this overlap we call as aliasing. There will be no time aliasing. And then you can write xp of n is equal to x of n. However, if x of n has got a length greater than n, as we had seen in the previous example, x of n had a length equal to 100 and capital N was equal to 80, then the two sequences will be different for all or for some of the samples. So, which were the values for which the two sequences are different? Which are the values for which the two sequences were different? The values were different for the samples from 0 to 19. Is that understood? The samples from 0 to 19 were different. the samples in xp of n and x of n from 0 to 19 were different. However, you see that there is no overlap for the samples from 20 to 79. Is it understood? Lakshmi?
Sir, it's understood.
It's understood. So, evidently, some samples are correct and some samples are incorrect. The samples that overlap or the samples that alias in time are incorrect, and the samples that do not alias in time are correct. So now we will move on to linear convolution. So we will take this parallel to linear convolution. So now we will start by looking at the linear convolution of two sequences. We will consider x1n as my first sequence and x2n as my second sequence. x1n has got a length L, x2n has got a length P, then x3n will have a length L plus P minus 1. It's understood, right? x3n will have a length L plus P minus 1. And now we look at the convolution theorem and in the DTFT, that's in the spectral domain, you have in the time domain you have x3 of n is equal to x1n convolved with x2n, and in the spectral domain you have x1 e power j omega and x2 e power j omega, which will call as x3 e power j omega, which means x3 of n and x3 of e power j omega form a discrete time Fourier transform pair. So what is the length of x3 of n? L plus P minus 1. Now let us sample x3 of n, that is x3 of e power j omega at omega k is equal to 2 pi k by n. N can be some value, n need not be equal to L plus P minus 1, maybe it is less than L plus P minus 1, or maybe it is greater than L plus P minus 1 or equal to L plus P minus 1. We will see the implications later, but n could be some value. Now sampling omega k is equal to 2 pi k by n and taking one period. Then in the frequency domain, you can write x1 of e raised to j 2 pi k by n is equal to, x3 of e raised to j 2 pi k by n is equal to x1 of e raised to j 2 pi k by n into x2 of e raised to j 2 pi k by n for 0 less than or equal to k less than or equal to n minus 1. So what was the length of x1n? It was equal to L. The length of x2n was equal to P. Length of x3n was equal to L plus P minus 1. And we are taking n samples of the spectral domain, n samples in the spectral domain for omega k equal to 2 pi k by n. That is, in the range 0 to 2 pi, you are taking samples from 0 to pi by n, 2 into 2 pi by n, etc. to 2 pi by n into n minus n. So that's the last sample that you are taking. So x3 of k you can write as x1k into x2k. Now, as before, let us call one period of x3 of k as equal to x3p of n. Okay, one period of x3 of k is equal to x3p of n. One period of x3 of k we will call as x3p of n. So under what condition will x3p of n be equal to x3 of n? So this you have to answer. Arvind Palad, please tell me, when will x3 of k be equal to, when will x3p of n be equal to x3 of n? x3p of n is the IDFT of x3 of k, IDFS of x3 of k, or IDFT of x3 of k. Arvind? Arvind's volume കുറച്ച് കുറവാണ്, അത് എനിക്ക് കേൾക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല. Arvind, hello? Arvind audible അല്ല. ആരെങ്കിലും പറയാമോ? അഭിഷേക്, x3 of k യും x3p of n, x3p of n എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ x3 of k യുടെ IDFT ആണ് പറയുന്നത്. x3p of n ഉം x3 of n ഉം സെയിം ആകുന്നത് എപ്പോൾ എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ചോദിച്ചത്. ആർക്കെങ്കിലും പറയാമോ? ആർക്കെങ്കിലും? എനിവൺ? Meenakshi, try answering this.
We are considering equal to. Sir, the n we are taking should be exactly equal to L plus P minus 1.
It should be at least equal to L plus P minus
P
one.
minus one.
It should be at least
Okay.
equal to, because
To-
if it is greater than L plus P minus 1, then there is definitely no overlap, right?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, so it has to be at least equal to L plus P minus. So the IDFT of x3 of k is x3 p of n. So from A we have x3 p of n is equal to x1 p of n. N point is circularly convolved with x2 p of n. This x3 p of n is one cycle of x3 p tilde of n, which is equal to sigma r equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x3 of n minus rn. So which means you require capital N to be at least equal to the length of x3 of n, which is equal to L plus P minus 1. Okay. So if n is greater than or equal to L, x1 P of n is equal to x1n. That is understood. We have seen that earlier. If n is greater than or equal to P, x2 Pn of n, x2 P of n is equal to x2 of n. But x3 P of n is equal to x3 of n if n is greater than or equal to the length of the sequence x3 of n. That is L plus P minus 1. So that there is no time aliasing. So circular convolution, therefore, we can conclude that circular convolution of two finite length sequences is the linear convolution of the two sequences followed by time aliasing. So this is a very, very, very important result. So which we will illustrate here. Is this visible? I've moved on to another PowerPoint presentation. I had put in a hyperlink there. So this screen is visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Something which is in the portrait form. So now see that there are, I've taken L and P to be the same. L is equal to P is equal to 6. So this is an example from your textbook, OpenAI and Chat. So L is equal to P equal to 6. So x1n is equal to x2n. So I have taken both sequences to be the same. x1n is equal to x2n and L is equal to P is equal to 6. So you see there are 6 samples. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So clear? Now this is the linear convolution of the two sequences. So that's very easily done. So for that, what you have to do is you have to mirror reflect the second sequence. So only one sample overlaps now. So the product is equal to 1. Now if you move the second sequence in, then 2 samples overlap. So the product is equal to 2. Product is equal to 3, 4, 5. Then 6 will mean that all the samples are overlapping. Then 5 will mean that this second sequence has moved out of the first sequence by 1 sample. Likewise, how many samples will be there? How many samples will be there? There will be 11 samples. L plus P minus 1, which is 6 plus 6, 12 minus 1. So there will be 11 samples. So I can write L plus P. So since P is equal to L, so I can just write L plus L, that is 2L minus 1. So the samples will be from 0 to 2L minus 2. So this is a sample 2L minus 1, 0 to 2L minus 2. Samples will be from 0 to 2L minus 2. So this is the sequence x3 of n. Okay. This is the sequence x3 of n. And now we are going to look at x3 of n minus n, where capital N is taken as equal to 6. So capital N is also taken to be equal to L equal to 6. So this is moved out by 6 samples. So earlier this had started from 0. Now this will start from the sample 6. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Starts from the sample 6. Okay. See how many samples are overlapping? The samples from 6 to 11 are overlapping. Likewise, I have this sequence x3 of n plus n. So this starts from minus 5. So you see that these samples are overlapping. And now if you add these two, you will get one cycle which has got 6 samples, and that one cycle is this value. So L. So if you add these two values, this value, so here you have at 0 you have this value plus this value. So this will be equal to L. So you add this portion here. So this will appear on top of this. So this value will also be equal to L. What about the next value? You see that the next value is also equal to n. So all the values will be equal to n from 0 to 6. So you see that how many samples are correct? You compare x3 of n. This is x3p of n. How many samples are correct? Can you tell me how many samples are correct? What about the first sample? The first sample had a value equal to 1. Now here the first sample has a value equal to n. So that is incorrect. What about the second sample? This had a value equal to 2. So that's also incorrect. Third sample is incorrect likewise. Fourth sample is incorrect. Fifth sample is incorrect. But however, you see that the sixth sample, which has got a value equal to L, that's value equal to 6 here, that is same as the value for x3p of n. That is x3p of 5 is same as x3 of n. So you see that the first 5 samples are incorrect and the sixth sample is correct. There is only one sample that is correct. Is that understood? Because that is the only sample that is not overlapping. Okay. Is this clear? Is this example clear? I would appreciate a feedback from you. Or do you want me to explain this further? മനസ്സിലായില്ലെങ്കിൽ പറഞ്ഞോളൂ. I don't have any difficulty to do this again. Arvind, Lakshmi, can you respond?
Sir, it's understood. I got it.
Okay, so some samples are correct. Which samples are correct? The samples that do not overlap are correct. The samples that are not time aliased are correct. And now the samples that are time aliased are incorrect. So this is important. This I need to establish before I go on to the next topic. So if I have circular convolution, then the circular convolution is time aliased linear convolution. Circular convolution is time aliased linear convolution, which means that if you take the n-point circular convolution, you take the value of n in the circular convolution. If you take n large enough so that there is no time aliasing, then all the samples of the circular convolution will be the same as that of the result of the linear convolution. Is this understood? I will need some feedback from you. Otherwise,
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, which samples are correct? Which samples are incorrect? Which samples are correct? The samples that are not time aliased are correct. And which samples are incorrect? Come on. Can anyone of you respond? Which are the incorrect samples? Joanne, I hope you are there. Joanne?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So which are the samples that are incorrect? The samples that overlap will be definitely incorrect.
Yes, sir.
The samples that do not overlap will be definitely
Correct.
correct. Arjita parayunnano or are you parroting my lines?
Sorry, sir.
Are you parroting my lines? Are you parroting
No, sir.
my
No,
lines?
sir.
Okay. So the samples that are time aliased are incorrect.
Incorrect.
The samples that are not time aliased are
Correct.
okay. The samples that do not overlap are therefore correct. So now, suppose I take this value of capital N to be equal to 12. Then it will mean that the second cycle will be shifted out by 12 samples, and therefore the replicas will not overlap. So see, now it is being shifted only by 6. So that is why it is overlapping. So if now I had shifted this out by 11, then the second cycle would have started here. So there would not have any overlap. If I shift it out by 12, then also there will not be any overlap. If I shift it out by 13, then also there will not be any overlap. So what does it mean? the value of capital N should be greater than or equal to L plus P minus 1 for circular convolution to be the same as that of linear convolution. So this has to be established. The value of capital N has to be greater than or equal to L plus P minus 1 for circular convolution to be the same as that of linear convolution. Now, if this value of capital N is less than L plus P minus 1, then there will be time aliasing for some samples, and the values for which you have time aliasing are incorrect, and the values for which you do not have any time aliasing are correct. So let us move on. So circular convolution of two finite length sequences is linear convolution of the two sequences followed by time aliasing. So what is the time now? It's already 9 o'clock, right? We started at what time? We started at 7:45. It's already 9 now. Let me take some 2 to 3 minutes to conclude today's session, and then we have to continue this maybe for a further 20 to 30 minutes for tomorrow, because I'm somewhat lagging behind the lesson plan. So circular convolution of two finite length sequences is linear convolution of the two sequences followed by time aliasing. So that is circular convolution will be the same as linear convolution if and only if will be the same as linear convolution if and only if. So I'll need some rearrangement here. So some unintended formatting took place. So the circular convolution corresponding to this expression, that is x3 p of n is equal to x1 n point circular convolved with x2n, which has got an n point DFT given by x1k and x2k, which is equal to x3 of k, will be the same as the linear convolution x3 of n is equal to x1n convolved with x2n, having a DTFT given by x1 of e power j omega and x2 of e power j omega, if and only if, this is the important result here, if and only if n is greater than or equal to L plus P minus. So that is a takeaway here. Now, Joanne, can you conclude today's session? Can you summarize today's session? If you summarize this properly, then we can end this for everyone. Otherwise, I will take some 10 minutes.
Sir, I'm not very sure.
So which means I will continue for some 10 to 15 minutes more. Okay, someone else, Lakshmi, Meenakshi, Abhishek, anyone? Or Dev Ganesh, let us see whether you can do that. What is your conclusion? How are circular convolution and linear convolution related? Dev Ganesh, poem.
Sir, he had some internet connectivity issues. He had told me to tell you in case you ask.
Okay, so now you can do the honors.
Oh, sir. Sir, I think we started with circular convolution and frequency domain by explaining, meaning by taking an example of a signal x of n and then we explained what a window signal is, as in W of n, and that if you view a signal through the window signal, you see only parts of it
Okay.
that can be seen through the window.
Right.
And
We saw the relationship between circular convolution and linear convolution. What is the relationship?
so circular convolution is the time aliasing of linear convolution.
Right. So for time aliasing for zero time aliasing to occur, or in order to avoid time aliasing, what should you do?
Sir, that condition has to be satisfied.
What is the condition?
N greater than equal to L
L
plus
plus
P minus 1.
Okay. So you also appreciate that even if n is less than L plus P minus 1,
Sir.
then in such a case also, there is an overlap of samples.
Yes.
And some of the samples are therefore incorrect. That is, the
Yes,
samples that overlap are incorrect, and the samples that do not overlap are correct.
Correct. Okay.
So we will need both these results. We will use these results to discuss the filtering of a long sequence. Say for example, you had discussed the filtering of x of n and h of n, and it assumes that you have x of n with you, and then assumes that you already have h of n with you. So what is x of n? X of n is your signal. And what is h of n? H of n is your filter. For example, if you want to filter my audio, people tell me that my sound is my pitch is a little bit on the lower frequency side. That is my bass is higher than what is usually said about a pleasant voice. So you might need to reduce the bass and slightly increase the treble. So for example, which means the low frequencies have to be suppressed and the high frequencies have to be increased, which means you might require a high pass filter, some form of a high pass filter. So which will mean that my lecture for 1.5 hours is required. That is my x of n. That is required with you to do the filtering. So which means that you can do the filtering only at the end of the lecture. So which is not at all what is required. In fact, you require the signal to be processed as and when the signal is being captured. So which means that you will have to look at the filtering of an infinite length sequence, or at least a very long length sequence with a finite duration filter. So that will give rise to what is that can be implemented only via what is known as block convolution, and this block convolution can be implemented via these properties that we have discussed, which is that circular convolution is linear convolution with time aliasing. For zero time aliasing, you should have n greater than or equal to L plus P minus 1, and even if n is less than L plus P minus 1, some samples are correct and some samples are incorrect. We will use this to implement what is known as the block convolution. So we will discuss that all in the coming classes. We will stop for today. Thank you all. But I require everyone to go through what has been discussed. So I believe that some of you might have actually lost track of the discussion in between. So I request them to go through the presentation and then be prepared for the forthcoming class. I will try to take a class maybe tomorrow for half an hour so that I can finish what I had intended to. We'll stop with this one. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.